Thank you for joining us this morning. So perhaps in the interest of time, we'll get started. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning. This is yet another business support forum that Team Burlington has organized to support our business community throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And we certainly appreciate everything that the federal government has done to support small businesses, medium enterprises, and others, both businesses as well as residents and employees, throughout these very, very difficult and challenging times. So on behalf of our Team Burlington partners, which includes the Chamber, Burlington Economic Development, our two BIAs, both the downtown as well as Aldershot Village, I can't thank you enough, and Tourism Burlington is also a key partner with us as well. So we have, as part of the registration process, received a number of questions from those who are joining us on the line. We have several dozen folks that are listening in live this morning. So for the benefit of everyone on the line, I just want to thank Minister Ng, Minister Gould for being here, as well as MP Demoff. We certainly appreciate and value the working relationship that we have with all of you. You've been incredibly responsive throughout these very difficult times, and this is yet another example of your leadership and being available to connect with and to assist our business community in Burlington and beyond. So thank you so much. And so with that, I'd like to actually turn it over to Minister Gould to make some opening remarks, and then we'll hear from Minister Ng, and then we'll perhaps launch into some of our questions.
Fantastic. Okay, well, Carla, thank you so much. And again, thank you to you and the Chamber and Anita and everyone at Burlington Economic Development for all that you've been doing to support our businesses through these past few months. And I'm just really glad that we have the opportunity to reconnect with everyone again. Today, we'd originally scheduled this meeting, I think for the end of May, but with the House coming back, we actually were sitting in virtual parliament at the time, so we weren't able to do it. So I'm really thrilled that we have Minister Ng with us. Minister Ng has been working just around the clock and has been so available to members of parliament and to businesses right across the country. And she has been so laser focused on making sure, particularly that small and medium-sized enterprises across Canada have access to the tools and the resources that they need to get through this pandemic. And then, of course, to be able to restart energetically and successfully as we continue to recover. And so it's a huge delight for me to be able to introduce Minister Ng. She's the Member of Parliament for Markham Thornhill, and she's also the Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade. And I know that everyone is looking forward to hearing from her. I can say that she is an incredibly hard worker. She is passionate about small businesses, having grown up in a small business herself. And she is just, an incredible champion for the work that all of you are doing. And so without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Minister Ng. Thank her so much for her time. She's incredibly busy these days, as everyone is, but it's a real treat to have her. So Mary, welcome to Burlington. Virtually, we're looking forward to when you can physically come here, and over to you. And thank you again for joining us today.
Well, thank you so very much, Minister Gould. It's great to be here with you, Karina, and of course with MP Demoff, who are just extraordinary colleagues. I mean, and thank you, Carla and Anita, for your incredible leadership for businesses in Burlington, which during a time which is, which can't be easy. It's been very, very tough for many businesses across the country. So we have been very laser focused at listening to businesses and making sure that the federal support that we have for businesses really are helping everyone and supporting. And as the pandemic came on quickly, we also needed to get supports out there quickly on the one hand, but also be of a very listening ear to make sure that we can adapt. And I want to give a shout out to, to Pam and to Karina locally. I mean, I can't do my job. The truth of it is I can't do it without my colleagues. And with my colleagues who are just ear to the ground, working with the businesses in their communities. I can't even count the number of email exchanges that Pam and I have had on just a whole range. I mean, and it'll just it can be on macro issues like, we're not sure that this is really helping businesses, or this is what I'm hearing, or from sort of very, very specific issues with respect to very specific businesses in both of both Karina and Pam's communities. So thank you so much for all of the work that you do in terms of ears to the ground to your businesses, working so hard with Anita and Carla and so many, just to make all of us work. We've all talked about Team Canada, and the truth of it is it has been a Team Canada effort. It has taken all of us across the country as Team Canada to flatten this curve, and everyone has still top of mind. Carla, as you said, the new requirements to keep people safe. The businesses that I've certainly talked to have, on the one hand, just this sense of both responsibility and ambition to make sure that we get that part as right as we can, because that and business, the health of Canadians and the health of our businesses in this restart is really super connected. It was wonderful to hear that the Canadian entrepreneurial spirit, though, was in huge display in Burlington during Canada Day. Because I heard that you guys had the largest Rib Fest that transformed into a drive-through. Like, I mean, how wonderful is that? And that is seeing communities come together, because even during this challenging time, people are finding ways to respond, to pivot, and to celebrate and enjoy, something so incredibly important like Canada Day, even though we're doing it very different today, respecting the health regulations. And we're seeing how businesses are innovating, and Pam and Karina often tell me how innovative they're innovative, and both innovative and entrepreneurial your constituents of the businesses are. And since the beginning of this pandemic, we promised as a government that we were going to listen to businesses and entrepreneurs, to bring in emergency supports and to make adjustments in direct response to what we heard. And in large categories, what did we hear from businesses? First, we heard that your teams are incredibly important. Even the tiniest businesses have people on their teams. It's their human capital that really that they were so concerned about making sure that we kept the teams and businesses together. So the wage subsidy support, where the Canadian government was paying 75% of employees' wages during the point of this pandemic, was absolutely critical. You heard, you may or may not have heard, but the Prime Minister just a couple of days ago have extended this support to December, because we believe that it is even more important now in the restart and in the recovery that businesses need this support, which is their human capital. To date, we have seen 581,000 applications. So that's well over 500,000 applications. This is helping just nearly 3 million Canadian jobs. And this number I expect will continue to grow as businesses are restarting. And it's going to be a key support that we're going to have out there for businesses as they begin to rebuild and reopen. Our colleague, the finance minister, is going to make more of these details available very shortly around the the wage subsidy support into December. So look out for that. The other thing that we heard from businesses was the need to just have flexibility, have liquidity and some cash flow to pay for the bills. Because if your operations were closing down, and even if they were scaled back significantly, or if you are looking to pivot your business in some way, you wanted some of that cash flow support. So here we introduced the small business loan. It's $40,000. $10,000 of that is interest-free. $10,000 of it is forgivable if you're able to pay it by the end of 2022. It's all interest-free, the whole $40,000. And so far, just to give people the order of magnitude, excuse me, my asthma is acting up these days. Just to give you the order of magnitude, like 690,000 businesses have taken this loan. So it's helping almost 700,000 businesses across the country, from sole proprietors to business owners who depend on contractors, to small businesses who need this extra support. And I know in Burlington and in Southern Ontario, we understand the importance of the manufacturing and the agri-food business, the tech business, and just the range of businesses that support your local community. And we know that $40,000 works for a lot of the small businesses, but we know that this lending support is also necessary. The liquidity is really important for businesses of all sizes, some of the larger businesses. So here we have provided Government of Canada guarantees for mid-sized businesses, sort of the larger revenue small businesses and those mid-sized businesses, of loans up to $12.5 million. Those are also available through your financial institutions, but they are government backed significantly. So going to your credit union or to your bank, if those businesses are looking for liquidity support, please go there. And we've also done some other things like helping businesses keep their costs low, deferring GST, HST, customs duties payments. That is covering a lot of businesses. To give you an order of magnitude there, it's equivalent to a $30 billion loan across the country, just simply by doing that one deferral. So keeping costs low for businesses, making sure that you have liquidity support, making sure that you are able to get access to rent support is another area that we have worked with provinces. It's an area that is not a federal responsibility, but the way we look at it is it's all of our responsibility to help businesses through this tough period and also into the restart. So we've extended that for July. And then for a lot of smaller businesses that may not get covered through what I just talked about, the program, whether it's the CEBA loans or the rent relief or the wage subsidy, we have the Regional Relief Recovery Fund. So this is about $1 billion across the country. And for Southern Ontario, there is a one-time, this works out to about a one-time $250 million fund, and it's supporting those small businesses that don't otherwise qualify. So I know that many businesses are working with FedDev and getting access to that support, including those that are high growth businesses. So just a range of supports. And then maybe the last thing I'll touch on before we get into the conversation, which is always the most fun part here, and I hopefully also the most interesting part as well, is around helping businesses, those that are exporting, making sure that the resilience of supply chains globally continues to work so that critical and essential goods and services are flowing. We know that supply chains have come under significant pressure. We know that a reliance on a single supplier or customer has created risks for some of our businesses. Canada's we're a trading nation. Diversification is very much a part of my role. I work very closely, of course, with Minister Gould in the work that we do globally. And on trade, it's making sure that those supply chains globally remain open. And I've certainly said this around the world, we should not be using COVID-19 as an excuse to stop trading or to turn inward or to erect protectionist policies, because it is through open trade that we can actually help our citizens in many of the countries around the world to weather through COVID-19. So we've been working with organizations like the APEC in Asia Pacific, the World Trade Organization, just to make sure that goods and services, and particularly essential medical supplies, flow during this period. And in Canada, we have stood up a Made in Canada solution. We're seeing businesses pivot. We certainly are seeing that in Burlington and indeed across the Halton region, and it's very exciting. So while it is difficult, and I don't want to diminish that at all, because it is difficult for many businesses, and we'll continue to work to support you. I think the message I want to leave to everyone is know that your government is there watching your back. And we're going to be with you along the way in this recovery, because it took Team Canada to flatten this curve. And Team Canada is behind all of us in an effort to rebuild that economy that is going to work for people and for all people, including our dynamic female entrepreneurs, our Indigenous entrepreneurs, our young entrepreneurs, our racialized entrepreneurs. So the work continues, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful conversation with everyone. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Minister Ng. And thanks for that great overview. We've had a few questions that our audience submitted in advance where we're going to dig in detail on some of the programs that you just mentioned. So our first question's around the Canadian Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. So could you tell us a little bit about that, how it's supporting small businesses? And specifically, we know there's a number of small businesses or landlords locally that either aren't able to participate for whatever reasons around how the program's currently structured. So are we considering any changes around that to allow more small businesses to participate?
Well, thank you so much for that, Anita. And that's certainly an issue that we have worked very hard to make sure that we have the support for those small businesses where a significant overhead expense is the cost of rent. Pam and I actually talk often about this, and I really want to thank again, I mean, for your advocacy, yours, Karina, as well, for our small businesses. So the program, rent support, rent is an area of provincial jurisdiction, but we felt it was really important to take on the leadership, work with our provincial colleagues to have a program that would help our small businesses with rent relief. I have heard some really good feedback from those that have used it. Many of the landlords can so in order to qualify, a business has to see a significant reduction in their revenue, 70%. This support is intended for those that have been the hardest hit. A landlord, in applying along with that small business tenant, will get 50% of that back in a forgivable loan, as long as the landlord passes this on to the small business owner. The process, the feedback I've been hearing is that the process really is quick and easy, and I'm very encouraged to see more and more landlords taking advantage of this. We've often said to the provinces and the territories, we must work together on this. So it's very good to also see the provinces step up to put a freeze on commercial evictions, so that we really are working together to ensure the success of this program. But listen, we are always intent on listening to businesses. Our job here is to save as many businesses, as many jobs as possible, and also to work with businesses during this difficult time. So our ears are, we continue to listen, but I think our range and suites of program is intended to be as supportive as we possibly can. And I'll quote our Prime Minister, he says better is possible, and better is always possible, and we're just going to have to keep working with our businesses to make sure that we are supporting them.
Thank you, Minister Ng. One of the things that we touched on just as we were dialing in is the new mandatory mask bylaw and or face covering bylaw that's being introduced. And we know that businesses now are focusing heavily on implementing and introducing measures that are going to ensure the safety of their employees as well as consumers and their clients. As part of that, though, there is obviously a burden that's being placed on small business owners in particular. Is the federal government considering any funding to assist business owners and operators with covering off those costs that are now associated with trying to ensure public health as well as the safety of their staff?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think I said a little earlier, I mean, everyone is paying particular attention, of course, to the health and safety of yourself, of your families, of your employees, of your customers, to create that confidence. I'm very pleased that the Government of Canada collaborated with a number of, with the private sector on an initiative called the Post Promise. I don't know if you're aware of the Post Promise, but this is a collaboration with it's a collaboration which is essentially a private sector initiative, and it encourages businesses to take 5 easy steps to commit to the health and safety of themselves and their workers and so forth. And so I would encourage businesses to take the Post Promise, and it really is 5 simple steps, and it includes those very practical things that we already are talking about, which is physical distancing, washing your hands, and wearing masks and so forth. And I know that businesses are bearing the additional cost of having to restart and meet those health commitments. We of course continue to listen to business. Many have said that they are using some of the CEBA, some of the CEBA loan money to assist with that. They've been able to use it throughout this period, and many of the small businesses have said that is also helping. But we continue to listen to businesses, because if the need is there, we certainly are looking at those needs as we speak.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Minister Ng. And that's something we've heard through our consultation. We recently launched the Burlington Economic Recovery Network. We've been doing multiple stakeholder sessions, and trust is a big issue that's come up for both consumers and employees as they start to bring them safely back to the workplace. And we know that you've already extended the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy past June to December now. Are there any other programs that you're looking at extending or revising, or perhaps new programs that you're thinking about introducing? And another key issue that's come out that I know you've announced some funding announcements around is women in the workplace, women in entrepreneurship, because we're seeing them hit disproportionately through COVID and the gender imbalances that are coming to light through pressures on women in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. The wage subsidy, I believe, is going to be quite important as businesses are starting to recover and to restart. Their greatest asset, their people, is a key feature in their restart. So the wage subsidy, I think, is going to be quite important. We did, the finance minister and myself did consultations just a couple of months ago as we did the first extension until the end of August, and we took that period to listen to businesses, and this came out overwhelmingly as a very, very important need. And you're absolutely right. With respect to women entrepreneurs, it's why this government has been very committed on economic participation for all, inclusive growth. That means the growth of our women-led businesses, our young businesses, our Indigenous businesses. It was really important to us that during COVID-19, that the barriers that they saw without a global pandemic does not get exacerbated so that we lose them during this period. So it was really important that they saw that support, which is why we added support to the women's entrepreneurship ecosystem, so that ecosystem support is there for that capacity support is there for women entrepreneurs. I think that Karina, Pam, and I have all talked to many female entrepreneurs, and they're wearing many hats right now, many hats. And because they're at home running their businesses, but also they still tend to be the primary caregiver. Yesterday, the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister reached what I think is a historical agreement in the Safe Restart. It's a $19 billion investment to provinces and territories. In that, it includes supports for childcare, really important. Supports for expanded testing and contact tracing, which will create that capacity in the healthcare system, but gets us on that road to support recovery. And it also is helping with the procurement of PPE, and also for municipalities that have transit expenses, because it isn't just about safety in the workplace. It's also about making sure that our citizens have that additional support as they move from home to their workplaces or elsewhere. So I guess all of this is to say is that the work is far from done. We have worked together as Team Canada to help weather the storm of COVID-19 in its most urgent period. And in this restart, we will need to continue to work with businesses to stay attuned to what the needs are. But I can assure you, inclusive growth is something that we are very that we have all, and certainly the female MPs here on this at this roundtable have been paying particular attention to, and that won't stop.
Thank you, Minister. And again, thank you so much. We were all very delighted by yesterday's funding announcement. Our mayor on an emergency task force call last evening described it as Christmas in July. So, certainly it was very, very welcome news. I wanted to go back to some of the other emergency relief benefits that have been made available to support employees, particularly those furloughed, those students that have been unable to work because of COVID and a variety of reasons associated with it. We are hearing from some of our business owners and other organizations that there is this sense that in some cases these programs are now creating some unintended consequences, that it's more difficult for them to attract employees, that they are encountering difficulties recalling employees. And so is the government looking at refining or fine-tuning some of these programs which have been extended to try to further incentivize employees to return to work, or to really encourage those who are currently receiving these benefits to reduce their reliance on them and to seek full-time employment? Can you speak to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. That balance is what, candidly, it's what I think about every day. It's what my colleagues do. It is that careful balance. I mean, I want to remind everyone that the Canada Emergency Response Benefit at the very outset was a critical tool to help Canadians flatten the curve. We needed people to not worry about how to pay for food on the table and how to make sure that roof is over their head. It was always intended to be a temporary benefit, and I would say that the temporary benefit had achieved its intended result, which is to help Canadians get through this, with millions of Canadians who saw their jobs or their income lost literally overnight. So making sure that they had the support that they needed so that we can all together flatten this curve was what it's about. And I would also say that COVID-19 has and will change things for our businesses. So we've been very careful at that calibration, at that balance, making sure that on the one hand, we support Canadians and workers. Some workers are going to need it a little longer than we had initially put out CERB 2 and for the students. But I think what's really encouraging are the job numbers. The job numbers over the last couple of months have seen millions. I think we could say millions. I think we're heading to almost, certainly over 1 million Canadians returning back to the workforce. And as the economy begins to restart, and employers are beginning to have the support to bring employees back through the use of the wage subsidy. For those, I would also say that there are many employers who don't have to use the wage subsidy. That's really terrific, because it means that they haven't seen the decline in their revenue and they're able to, to continue to contribute, and their employees are able to continue to contribute. But I want to assure everyone that this is a very careful balance, and all the businesses that I've talked to literally across the country, and we see this in other jurisdictions as well, it's that careful balance between the health of Canadians and the start of our economy. And how we get that balance right means that we won't suffer that snapback. I think that, in fact, businesses have been very clear to me that they don't want to see a snapback. They don't want to see the progress that has been lost. So I do know that we certainly have been hearing about the unintended consequence, and we are going to keep working at this. The balance that we need to have as a Canadian government is to make sure that we are supporting workers and people, and at the same time doing what we can, everything that we can, working with businesses, the chambers, business organizations, to make sure that we get on that road to recovery. We don't lose the progress we've made, but we continue on that slow and steady, and let's keep doing this so that we can get on that recovery in a confident way.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Minister. So speaking of recovery, we're starting to move into phase-free reopening here in Ontario. We're not quite in Burlington yet. We're hoping for a nice announcement, but we'll see. So this is obviously going to require a significant amount of coordination to do this between the provincial, federal, local governments. Could you talk about the roles of each level of government and
Absolutely.
how we'll be supporting successful reopening of our economy?
Absolutely. Throughout this entire time, and yesterday's announcement was no different. And in fact, I would say yesterday's Safe Restart is the culmination of the efforts between all levels of government working together, the federal government with its provincial and territorial counterparts. The Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister have done weekly virtual meetings, calls with provincial and territorial premiers so that we are working as Team Canada. I think that's one of the things that we can all be very proud of, which is the commitment. It's our commitment. It's our commitment, and it's our job to Canadians to because I think that's what Canadians expect of us, to work together so that we are collaborating. I'll give you.
I think we may be glitching.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was just my internet.
Yeah. I think
maybe we can move on to the next question while we wait for Minister Ng to come back. I think the next question was for Minister Ng. Shall I move on to the one for Minister Gould?
Yeah, why don't we do that? That would be great.
So, Minister Gould, could you share further insight on the government's recent economic update and what those predictions and realities mean for our current economy in the near and long term? And I think we've dropped our other minister there, so hopefully she'll come back.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, I will do my best, Anita. You know, the snapshot that we provided in on July 8th obviously had some big numbers involved, but those numbers are a result of the interventions and the programs that we've put in place to kind of keep the Canadian economy going. And I think, you know, what Minister Ng was talking about was the fact that because of the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, because of the Canada Emergency Business Account, you know, we were able, and other things like the emergency wage subsidy, you know, to make sure that individuals had money in their pockets, they could pay for rent, they could pay for food, they could have the peace of mind to stay home and to flatten the curve. And, you know, as Minister Ng, who I see has rejoined us, so good to have you back, was saying is that, you know, we can't untie the health crisis from the economic crisis, right? We're seeing this very clearly south of the border. You know, that if we hadn't have taken the measures that we took here in Canada, we could have seen something similar. And I think as we safely continue to restart the economy, it just further underlies how important it is for us to continue to take these measures as needed, and also to continue to follow the advice of public health, so we don't have to do what we're seeing in some southern states where we're re-shutting things down because we know what those economic consequences are going to mean. The other part that I would just highlight in terms of, you know, the fiscal update and the snapshot that was provided in July was the fact that, you know, this is investments that were made in people, in organizations, but social infrastructure, social services as well, and in support of the provinces, territories, and municipalities. And so this was a huge undertaking. You know, this has been described as the largest global crisis since World War II. You know, this is the largest investment that the Canadian government has made in peacetime. But we also know that this took a whole of country approach to be able to get to where we are today. And we're going to have to keep being very vigilant and very focused. We don't have a crystal ball in terms of what the next 6 to 12 months look like. But, you know, because of the actions that, you know, were taken from the individual citizen right up to the federal government, you know, we can be proud of where we are, but we're going to have to continue to be very, very vigilant and very mindful as we continue to move forward.
Thank you. Maybe we can shift gears a little bit here and focus on trade for just a few moments, particularly given all of you on the line that are joining us. So we know that the pandemic has really made, you know, a number of countries very, very reluctant and fearful about relying on imports from abroad. And we'd love to hear from you about how the federal government is planning to encourage foreign markets to purchase Canadian exports? I mean, what is being done and being contemplated? And I know maybe MP Demoff, you may have some thoughts or feelings, but we'd love to hear from you about that. But also, what do we think the long-term impacts of COVID-19 are going to be on import and exports for Canada and really global trade overall?
Well,
Thanks.
that's a
Go ahead, Mary.
No, go ahead. No, Pam, go ahead. Why don't you do it? I've done a lot. Why don't you chat, and then I'll chime in afterwards.
Yeah, I'll
multifaceted
maybe
question.
start. I'll start, Carla, and then I can turn it over to Mary. I mean, I think this crisis is not, nor should it be, an excuse to stop trade. And if anything, it probably reinforces what we were trying to do pre-COVID, which was to look at trade diversification. I think of a company like Metrocan in Burlington that relies on trade within North America, in the United States and Mexico. And we're thrilled when the new NAFTA agreement was signed, and that has just come into force, as you know, this month. So we need to make sure that those trade lines are open, and that's why from the beginning we made sure that we were keeping the supply chains open, because we know that businesses rely on trade, and so it's a priority for the government to support our Canadian companies. And I look at how they've been able to shift and diversify. I'm going to mention another Burlington company, Hunter Amenities, who it's a huge, if you've ever stayed at a Marriott hotel or been on a cruise, you've used their soap, that you've used their shampoo, done it at Hunter Amenities here in Burlington, and they lost their business overnight. They were able to shift, use government programs to be able to move to hand sanitizer, and now they want to figure out how they can maintain that business while also as the hospitality industry comes back into force, how they're going to be able to do both. So maybe I'll turn it over to Mary to talk about more specifics on trade, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Pam, those are terrific examples. We are seeing the resilience of Canadian businesses that have pivoted their business. And at the beginning of this pandemic, when the country was looking and has procured PPE as an example, so whether it's ventilators or masks or sanitizers and so forth, we went through a procurement phase, but at the same time, we stood up Canadian capability, made in Canada solutions, and it's incredible. I mean, I can spend the next, actually, in fact, I can spend the day to sort of talk about the many, many examples across the country where companies have pivoted, and now we have, now we have a capability here made in Canada. But those capabilities also mean that Canada as a global partner is seen as credible. We are seen as high quality. We are seen as trusted. And we work within the multilateral rules-based system. And throughout all of this, I have been working as the trade minister with colleagues in the G20 countries. I host a group of countries, about 13 like-minded countries through the Ottawa Group. And through the pandemic, we agreed that we would work together to make sure that we would continue to build and ensure the resilience of supply chains, particularly around medical supplies, but essential goods and services, agriculture. Canada feeds Canada. Canada also feeds the world. So Canada taking its leadership in the global, on the global stage, to make sure that we are putting out statements with like-minded countries working together so that those resilient supply chains are, continue, has been what we have been doing. The Trade Commissioner services, which we have all around the world, have been working tirelessly throughout this pandemic, because we have Canadian operations, we have Canadian businesses that operate around the world, making sure that they are supported as things were just shifting for our Canadian enterprises. And just to pick up on your point, Carla, and on Pam's, it's time to double down on trade diversification. We started this well before COVID-19. It's part of my mandate to help our Canadian companies not only start up and scale up here domestically in Canada, but finding growth in those global markets. Canada has some very I think we have some very strong tools that to the benefit of Canadian businesses and to the Canadian workers and people, and that is in our trade agreements. We have important regional trade agreements that get us into important economic zones. Like in North America, it's with the US and Mexico. We have access to the European market through the CETA, through the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Trade Agreement with the European Union. We also have access to the Asia Pacific market, to countries like Japan, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Chile. Like, these are important trade agreements. And what are, like, I mean, really, agreements are only good if we can actually help our businesses take advantage of it. So there's progressive chapters in there that actually gets us accessing really important business opportunities in those regions, and helping our businesses not only get there, but once they're there, be successful and find those opportunities. And we're going to double down on helping our businesses access those markets. Those very made in Canada solutions are made in Canada, but they can be sold elsewhere, and they can be exported elsewhere. So there is an exciting road ahead. A lot of hard work, but certainly exciting, so that we can capitalize on those strengths that we've already done well before COVID-19.
Thank you so much for that. Minister Gould, did you want to add anything to that, or?
Just to say that, I mean, one of the things that Mary mentioned that I think is worth highlighting is that what we've heard from partners all around the world is that they're looking for trusted sources and trusted businesses to work with. And particularly what we've seen in COVID is, suppliers that have been, outbid, or buyers that have been outbid by the next buyer. And so what, we're looking at in new markets, really, like in developing countries, in frontier markets, is they're looking for reliable partners. And Canada has been that reliable, trusted source. And so that is a huge opportunity, I think, for Canadian companies, because our brand is so well received around the world. And the other thing that I would just highlight, and Mary mentioned it, but it shouldn't be understated how important a role she's played in terms of the Ottawa Group with the World Trade Organization, making sure that supply chains stay open, that world trade continues, and really Mary and François Philippe, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, have just done an extraordinary job making sure that there are markets available for Canadian companies around the world, and her leadership has just been tremendous in this.
Agreed, and thank you. And I know that Minister Ng, you have a hard stop now. I know that you have another commitment. Are there any final thoughts that you want to share with us before we move into our last question and our wrap up? We don't want to delay you.
Well, I also have two colleagues that are standing here staring at me with beady eyes. So, but I would say this, that this is a period where I think that nothing can stop us. Nothing can stop our Canadian businesses. But we are going to have to sort of link hand in hand and collaborate and work together. We are seeing some incredible, wonderful pivots, but we're also seeing challenges. So, I don't think that I've been saying, I used to say this, which is you need to see it to be it. And I used to say it in the context of a female leader. But you know what? I now say it, you need to see it to be it. And we want to feature those incredible businesses that have found, that have gone on that tough journey and have found the pivot, and to show it is possible. And I think the more, and today I'm actually on tour in Cobourg and in Peterborough, and I'm going to be meeting some of these businesses, and is to see it to be it, so that we can show Canadian businesses that it's possible and that they can learn from each other. And so, I think we're all going to do this together, as we have. I think if there's one thing that COVID-19, despite its challenges, has left for us is that it's given us the additional opportunities to do some things a little differently. And thank goodness for this creating, Canadian ingenuity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister, for being here. We do have one final question, and we'll continue that with Minister Gould and MP De Moffat. Thank you so much. We're so
okay.
good to
bye.
see you.
It's so good to be with you. Okay, see you guys.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.
Great. Bye-bye. Great. So in the few minutes we have before we wrap up, I know that we have a hard stop at 11:30. Final question before we open up to any other remarks that you'd like to make. There still is a lot of uncertainty ahead, and people are talking about recovery, but as we all know, this has been an incredibly uncertain time. It's been very challenging for government to craft policies and programs in response, and that uncertainty is going to continue and persist for some time. So what are some of the ongoing challenges that the federal government is facing in developing fiscal policies in response to so many unknowns? It's a big question, I know. So.
Well, Carla, I think you answered it in the simple word of uncertainty, right? I mean, whether you're a government or you're a business, I mean, the one thing that you're hoping for is some kind of certainty and stability to be able to make those decisions. But that being said, I think what's been demonstrated over the past 5 to 6 months is really that, the federal government is there for you as a Canadian, whether it's as an individual or as a business or as an organization, that we will ensure that you have the supports that you need to make it through this. That being said, yesterday's announcement of a $19 billion agreement with the provinces and territories on the safe restart is really important, because we know that we need to be able, to the best of our ability, control the spread of the virus here in Canada. So we've done an incredible job, and this is right, as I said, from Canadians through to all levels of government, to flatten the curve when it comes to the health crisis. But obviously the health crisis doesn't happen in a vacuum, and there are economic and social spin-offs and impacts that occur. And so yesterday's announcement, included support for continued purchasing and procurement and distribution of personal protective equipment through to the provinces, additional support for things like childcare to make sure that, workers with young families can get back to work. They don't have, they still have their childcare responsibilities, and you can hear my child yelling in the background here, but that they can actually, have someone to look after their child. They can feel safe, know that it's done in a secure way, and get back to work. It also included support for municipalities, as you mentioned, who are feeling the strain as people stay home, they don't use public transit, they've had to close down recreation programs, and et cetera, et cetera. And so really we have, and then the other thing that there's a lot of support for is continued testing and contact tracing, right? Because we know that for the countries that have been most successful in keeping the virus at bay, that it has been about a massive testing, tracing strategy to make sure that we can quickly identify when there's an outbreak, and to be able to contain it, to isolate those individuals so that the rest of the economy can keep going. So these are all things that are new, that are not part of our normal way of doing business, but is going to have to be part of the new normal as we continue and we get things back going. We completely recognize and understand that maintaining an economy that's shut down is not sustainable over the long run, right? And so what are the strategies and the new things that we need to do and activities to make sure that we can be firing on all cylinders as much as possible to get people back to work, to get businesses back into the office and back into their warehouses and back into their stores, and keep going while still keeping Canadians safe and healthy.
Can I pipe in there too, Carla?
Yes, I was just going to ask you, Pam. We'd love to hear from you.
Not a lot to add, but I think, there will be no economic recovery if we don't manage the health crisis. And I think I'm proud of the way that Canadians have responded to the pandemic, Canadian as individuals and as businesses. And as we start to reopen, seeing how governments have worked together, and as Karina was mentioning, yesterday's announcement is another example of all of us working together together, and quite frankly, the federal government really stepping up financially to support provinces and municipalities. I saw some figures the other day where for every family, the federal government has contributed over $17,000 in Ontario, and the province is significantly less than that. But we've been really stepping up to make sure that families are supported, that businesses are supported. Has it been perfect? No. I don't think anybody has had a roadmap for how to do this, nor how to come out of it, quite frankly. But I think things like sick leave to make sure that people are staying home when they are sick is critical to making sure that we manage the health crisis, and with that, we manage the economic recovery. And I also want to give a shout out to the Burlington Chamber, to Burlington Economic Development, the whole team Burlington, who helps to inform us so that we can bring the concerns to the government and be able to modify programs if they need to be, to see where there are gaps. And really, your leadership in Burlington has been, it's just been tremendous. And Karina and I would not be able to do the jobs that we do without your support, without your input, because it's been critical to the decisions the government has made. So I want to thank you for that, because it really has influenced what we've been able to do as a government.
Well, thank
Can
you.
I just say one last thing though, Carla?
Of course, yes, please.
Because I think probably a lot of people on the line know this individual, but I just got a message that Oakville Councillor Ralph Robinson passed away. And sorry, my mind kind of disappeared there for a moment, and when I grabbed my face, that was why. But I just want to let people know and thank Ralph for being such a great guy.
Oh, so sad to hear. So very sorry to hear that. I just I know that we're up against our hard stop. I just wanted to say sincerest thanks to both of you for being on the call this morning. We've greatly appreciated your leadership throughout this extremely difficult time. And as Anita mentioned, as Team Burlington, we're championing the Burlington Economic Recovery Network. We have a lot of work ongoing over the course of this summer, holding extensive consultations with different sectors of stakeholders across the community, representing industries and businesses of all shapes and sizes. So certainly, we'll do our utmost to ensure that the insights that we're gaining are available to you for the benefit of the federal government's decision making moving forward. So we look forward to continuing our work together. I think you said it very, very well. There is no playbook. It has been very much like building the plane as we have been flying it throughout this process. Extremely difficult to design programs and policies with such a short period of time and with so little data to rely upon to inform those decisions. But at the same time, on behalf of our business community, we appreciate how responsive you have been, how much you have listened, and we welcome that relationship moving forward. It's we've got a lot ahead of all of us, but again, we're in this together, and being able to work together and collaborate, I think, is integral to our success. So any final comments you'd like to share or remarks before we wrap up today?
Sure. Do you want to go first, Pam?
Just to say thank you, Carla, Anita, everyone involved, for bringing us together. These forums are so helpful, and just thank you.
Great. And well, of course, thank you, Carla and Anita, for putting this together, and Pam for being such a great partner here in Burlington. But I just wanted to highlight one thing that you said, Carla, because it's really important, and it ties back to what Pam said, is that we are only able to do our job when we get your feedback, right? And so we've been getting lots of your feedback, and we really appreciate it. And it's actually meant that conversations that Pam and I have had with ministers like Mary Ng or Bill Morneau or Melanie Joly have meant that we've changed our programs to make sure that they're more responsive. And so continuing to share that with us is super helpful. And ultimately, I know I said this, in the first forum that we had, that feels like ages ago, because so much has changed since then, but the background hasn't changed. But is that we ultimately want to see you be successful, right? We recognize how important small and medium businesses are in our community. You are the backbone of our local economy. You provide employment, you provide charitable dollars, or in the community as well. And so, we really, really want to see you be successful. So please keep sharing what's working, what's not working with us, so that we can advocate on your behalf, and so that we can make sure that we continue to get the programs that you need and to get them right. So thank you again for hosting us, for having this opportunity, and looking forward to the next time that we can engage either virtually or in person. And just one final reminder to please keep following the advice of our local public health authority. It's so important that we keep doing this, and we all keep doing our part, so that we can keep moving into the next phase of recovery and get back to a more normal life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Beautifully said. So on that note, thank you again for being with us today. Thanks to all of our participants for listening in, and I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.